Ferrari's problems are both numerous and long-lasting. The historic Formula One team is also the most successful to ever compete in the sport. Their 16 constructors' titles and 15 drivers' titles put them well above any other team in the all-time charts. Their incredible history makes them so important to Formula One that they're actually paid more by F1 than any other team for their presence on the grid. However, that long and storied past is just that, the past. Ferrari have been without a trophy since 2008, and this season looks set to be the worst since that drought began, with the team winless and looking set to fall to 4th in the Constructors' Championship. So what has been going wrong with Ferrari? How has this Goliath of Formula One fallen so far? And why is this season looking set to be one of their worst? Well, today I'll check it all out, so don't go anywhere. Ferrari's failures this year are not small. You could call out pit wall mistakes, setup problems, failed development, Hamilton's struggle to adapt, or basically any other part of the team. The double DQ in China was a particular embarrassment, but the problems go far deeper than just some difficulties with their ride height. The truth of the matter is, Ferrari's car simply isn't good enough. It isn't just about the car they start the season with either. It is the in-season development which also causes them problems. Now, this isn't a persistent problem. They have done good work in the past. Just last year, they fought their way into contention for the Constructors' Championship with their in-season development. However, even in that season, where they came close, a failed floor upgrade at the Spanish Grand Prix had to be removed because it made the car worse. This season, Ferrari have been hit with a two-punch combo of a bad starting car and bad upgrades. Specifically, their mid-season development after the technical directives introduced at the Spanish Grand Prix 4 months ago, which were designed to limit wing flexing. Since then, Ferrari have avoided working on their front wing. Now, this could be put down to them turning their attention to 2026, but that would be ignoring the fact that they've still been bringing upgrades. The team brought a huge upgrade to the Belgian Grand Prix. A new rear suspension was expected to improve driver confidence and braking stability, but data shows it has brought no measurable gains. While Ferrari's upgrades failed, Mercedes and Red Bull found more performance. Mercedes in Belgium at the end of July and Red Bull in the Netherlands a month later had already introduced specific front wing modifications to try to end the season on a high note, but come Singapore, they had further adaptations. Circumventing the constraints of Technical Directive TD018, the one from this year's Spanish Grand Prix, is not a simple task. However, the teams have had time to first comply with the directive ahead of the Spanish Grand Prix and then work on materials to regain a level of flex which aids them aerodynamically while passing the more stringent FIA tests. Ferrari decided that with TD018 in place, the front wing wasn't worth their time anymore. Since its introduction, they've lost more and more ground to those ahead as well. This is just the most recent rule change to have caught Ferrari flat-footed, and it is part of a growing trend which is extremely worrying for the team. When the FIA closes a loophole or tightens the rules, Ferrari fail to adapt. You don't have to go back that far to find a number of examples of this happening. For example, the asymmetrical brakes controversy of last season. At the Bahrain Grand Prix in 2024, Leclerc was fighting for a podium before finding himself fighting a serious technical issue. His team radio revealed an abnormal temperature difference between the front brake discs, which the driver couldn't fix despite constant adjustments and lift and coast driving. Every time Leclerc hit the brakes hard, the steering wheel pulled violently to one side, forcing him to slow down. It was a bizarre failure that at the time no one could explain, and one that was soon forgotten. That summer though, the FIA released a clarification explicitly banning any braking system that caused asymmetrical braking on the cars. The paddock rumours suggested the clarification was aimed at Red Bull, but the team appeared to be unaffected. However, questions lingered over what had happened to Ferrari's number 16 car in Bahrain, and how the behaviour of Leclerc's car could be explained by the system the FIA just banned. Since Technical Directive 18 was introduced at the Spanish Grand Prix, Ferrari's braking system has been a shambles. Hamilton has blamed the brakes for his difficulties adapting to the team, and both Ferraris have spent more time lifting and coasting than trying to go fast this season. In fact, the lifting and coasting, which is to help cool the brakes, has caused Leclerc to scream over his radio at times. In Singapore, Hamilton's couple of aggressive laps ended with his front brakes destroyed, and he had to straight line much of the course over his last few laps. Going just a little further back, you'll find more instances of Ferrari operating too far into the grey area of the rules and then failing to adapt when the FIA closes loopholes. In 2022, Ferrari had a serious chance at an F1 driver's title. They launched the F175, and the season started brilliantly. The car had downforce, it was really drivable, it had great power, and a really broad setup window. Charles Leclerc led the Drivers' Championship early on and went head-to-head with Max Verstappen through the middle phase of the season. However, with the new ground effect floors being most effective when closest to the ground, teams up and down the grid slammed their cars as close to the ground as possible, and porpoising became a serious health concern for the drivers. F1 teams have a long history of forgoing driver safety for performance, and this was just the most recent example. At the end of June, the FIA issued TD39. The rule change addressed the porpoising problems and closed a grey area concerning the flexibility of the floor plank, which teams were using as a way around the floor wear test. It came into effect at the Belgian Grand Prix, and immediately, Ferrari's team radio chatter focused on managing plank wear over the bumps at Eau Rouge and at the end of the Kemmel Straight. The rules had changed, and Ferrari didn't have an answer. The form collapsed. Red Bull won every race until Abu Dhabi, except for Russell's victory for Mercedes in Brazil. Many blamed politics, aerodynamics, or the porpoising issue, but the real question lingered. How much of Ferrari's performance had depended on that grey area which the directive had just shut down? Because once it was gone, so was Ferrari's pace. Then again, just a few years earlier, Ferrari were once again caught playing too far toward the edge of the rules. Back in 2020, Ferrari mysteriously turned up to the start of the season with a car that was suspiciously slow. The 2019 car was an absolute rocket ship on the straights, but lacked the downforce needed to compete with Mercedes over an entire season. In 2020, they turned up with a much changed car which was significantly slower on the straights. The assumption at first was that they had added loads of downforce on, but just done a bad job of it, introducing way too much drag and killing the car's straight-line speed. However, before the season could begin properly, the FIA announced a mysterious settlement had been reached with Ferrari relating to the use of their 2019 power unit. It is widely believed that Ferrari had found a way around the fuel flow rules at the time, feeding their engine more fuel than should have been legal, giving them a horsepower advantage. GPS analysis of their cars at the time suggested that their engine lost 65 brake horsepower over the winter. It was a disaster for the team, who had their worst finish in the Constructors' Championship since 1980. The following season, they still couldn't recover fully from the FIA closing whatever loophole they were using, finishing a very distant third and only securing 5 podium finishes in 43 race starts. So you can now see the pattern. Ferrari find a grey area they can exploit, make full use of it, and then the FIA close the gap, causing Ferrari to flounder. Of course, every team in F1 exploits loopholes. You have to work in grey areas to win in this sport. However, you also have to know that when you do, there is always a risk of the loophole you are using getting closed. Other teams can adapt, as Mercedes and Red Bull have done this season with their front wings, but Ferrari have repeatedly failed. This is a serious issue, and it will cause a team huge problems next season. But before I talk about that, if you're enjoying the video and want to catch more news and analysis on this F1 season, then make sure to press the like button and subscribe to F1 Reverse. Thanks a lot. New regulations are an exciting time for everyone in F1. For us, the fans, it means the competitive order is getting reset. This will be the first regulations which have been totally developed during the budget cap era. The smaller teams on the grid have every chance to compete with the biggest and the best next year, and that is really exciting. For the teams, a new rulebook means a new car, a fresh start, and more freedom than the engineers have had for over a decade. This brand new rulebook is full of things to explore, and there are undoubtedly a lot of grey areas to be abused. Again, this is part of Formula 1, but for Ferrari, it could cause problems. Lean too far into a loophole which ends up getting closed and you set yourself so far back, you can't get back. Throughout 2026 and 2027, we will see multiple technical directives introduced as teams protest each other's cars for things that they deem are too far into the grey. Ferrari have shown multiple times that they can't recover from these grey areas getting blocked off, and that's a big worry for the fans of the team and their drivers. Charles Leclerc's verdict on Ferrari's disappointing Formula One season this year is only getting more bleak as it gets nearer the end, and he's even started to sound worried for next year and beyond too. He has correctly identified that Ferrari hasn't seen progression throughout the year relative to the front of the grid. He feels Ferrari had the same deficit since the start, whereas now Red Bull and even Mercedes are getting to McLaren's level. And that's leaving Leclerc and teammate Lewis Hamilton as passengers, as they cannot do anything to fight for better positions. I really hope we start 26 on the right foot, because otherwise it's going to be a tough couple of years, Leclerc said. Charles has been with Ferrari through all the failures I outlined earlier in the video. He knows better than anyone what happens when Ferrari gets set back. He says he's still looking forward to 2026, and it surely can't come soon enough given how badly Ferrari's 2025 season has tailed off. But you sense his trust in his team to get things right is waning. When Leclerc signed a big contract extension back in January of 2024, which is reported to commit him to Ferrari until the end of 2029, he wouldn't have been expecting to reach the end of a full decade with the team without winning a world championship. But if Ferrari make the same mistakes again in the new regulations, that is what will happen. Leclerc is too good a driver to be stuck at a Ferrari team who at times look like Sisyphus, constantly pushing their car toward the peak of Formula One, only to have to start again after being cast down by the FIA. If Ferrari fail again, something they look doomed to do, then Leclerc will be looking for any exit he can find. Do you think Ferrari has a problem that can't be solved? Or can they learn from their mistakes and find a way to not get caught out by changes in the new regulations? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.